Graham
I can
Brady.
report as returning officer that 359 ballots were cast, no spoiled ballots, that the vote in favour of having confidence in Boris Johnson as leader was 211 votes, and the vote against was 148 votes. And therefore, I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
There you go. He survived. It's not a huge margin. It's a bigger margin than what people expected.
Well, I think the LBC team were spot on. I think if you take my prediction and Ian's predictions and go divide with him, we're pretty much exactly there.
Well, let's look at the percentages, because 41% of Conservative MPs have voted against their leader. 59% obviously therefore voted in favour. Now, I thought it might be a little bit worse than that for him, but I mean, again, as I said before, that is political no man's land.
It is political no man's land. I'm absolutely sure Boris Johnson will be out of the front of Downing Street or wherever he is at the moment in a shot saying this is a victory. Thank you to the Conservative Party. We now put all of this behind us. It's all over. And of course he will say that. But that's a heck of a lot of MPs voting against their own Prime Minister. Looking at the history of these votes going back, I'm afraid the Prime Minister is still living through a wilderness of pain, and there's more to come ahead.
It's going to be very interesting to hear what Jacob Rees-Mogg makes of this, given that when Theresa May...
Yeah, I think when it's well, let me make it incredibly clear. This was the result that I wanted. I wanted Boris Johnson to stay on. I wanted the margin to be reasonably thin. I think 59, 41, 41% of MPs being completely against him is much higher than what has previously been with other leaders who faced no confidence votes from the Conservative Party. This is exactly what I wanted. I didn't want Boris Johnson to go. I think he's a liability for the long-term future of the Conservative Party, and I think we do not want them to be able to rebrand to be not the party of Boris Johnson anymore. Throughout the issues that have surrounded his premiership, or that have surrounded the Conservative premiership previously, the issues with Boris Johnson's premiership have been explicitly tied to Boris Johnson as a personality by what figures in the media have said, what figures in the opposition have said. They've explicitly tried to make it part of the Boris Johnson brand, rather than an issue of the Conservative Party and the way in which that party functions and the way in which they are just there to kind of serve their donors and to be able to win elections rather than actually to serve within the public good. I think that we need to look further than just the personality cult of Boris Johnson. And by explicitly tying the issues that have happened over the past 2-3 years or whatever to Boris Johnson as an individual specifically, if he had been ousted in this particular no confidence vote, then they would have been able to give the Conservative Party room to rebrand between now and the general election, which has to happen, 2 years, whatever, down the line. That rebranding opportunity, in lieu of Boris Johnson's premiership, would be the best way in which the Conservatives would be able to gain power at the next election, right? So I think it is good from as far as the left is concerned for Boris Johnson to stay in power, and it's even better for him to stay in power with an incredibly low mandate as leader of the Conservative Party, right? To only be able to command 59% confidence in your own party will yield a future schism within the party as it moves on. I've said previously today, and that people, when they look at governments, they want to see a strong party in power, right? Especially people who would usually vote for somebody like the Conservatives, explicitly looking for someone to be able to lead them with the backing of a strong parliamentary party. An incredibly split party, 41-59. How far away is that from the Brexit referendum, for example? That shows incredible disunity, and that's only going to drag their polls lower moving forward, as we've seen, right? As Warren Equation puts out, he's basically fucked at this point. Like, how can he continue? How can he continue on without calling, for example, something like, I don't know, an early election, right? That's now something that's now definitely on the cards. He's not been removed, so he has the chance with which to lead the party moving forward. But how can he solidify confidence in his own party without having some kind of election down the line, or stepping down like May and like Thatcher did, even after Thatcher, for example, won a vote of no confidence with a better margin than Boris Johnson did right now, and ended up stepping down, moving further down the line, for example, right? We will almost, if Boris Johnson wants to keep hold of power, which he almost certainly does, as we've seen over time, whether it's conspiring to beat up journalists or paying money to the press to give them favourable coverages and in stories, or lying to Parliament, or just in general lying to the electorate with the promises that he made in his manifesto with regards to the Brexit deal and things like that. What things that were involved coming up to the 2019 election, right? It's very clear that all he cares about is being able to maintain power. That's what he cares about, and hence why he's broken from a lot of conservative tradition and the policy platform that he's had, that he's engaged with, post-pandemic at the very least, has not been as conservative as a lot of people would have liked him to. Like raising taxes, for example, is something that you really wouldn't usually get from a conservative government. So he's clearly stepped out of a lot of orthodoxy with those policy positions, right, to try and maintain power, because he's at the heart a populist rather than an ideologue, which is interesting. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward with someone who's so keen to maintain power. I don't think he'll step down like Thatcher and May did. I think what will end up happening is that we'll see, moving forward, an early general election for him to try and then regain that trust. Because if he can pull off another election victory, those 41% of MPs will then have to regain their confidence to maintain the semblance of unity moving forward in the case of a new Conservative government. I don't think that will happen. I think if he does call an election, he'll get absolutely crushed, because this incredibly weak show of confidence will only damage his standing moving forward. But you never know. Boris Johnson is an enigmatic figure, to say the least, and he may well win an election moving forward. But again, it'll be interesting to see the Liberal reaction to this. All the Liberals calling for the 41% of MPs who have been scorned by Boris Johnson and lauding them as of people who have incredible honesty and integrity, despite the fact that they've been supporting the government throughout all of the stuff that they've been doing, all the cronies and they're engaged in, all the corruption they've engaged in, all the all the lying, all of the sleaze, all of that stuff, all of the mishandling of policy prescriptions that they've done. They will let go of all of them just because they voted against the bad man, which again is part of an issue with the framing that has been going on previously with regards to it being marketed as a Boris Johnson issue rather than a Conservative issue. That's the real problem that you're going to get from this. Like, but in the end of the day, libs are going to lib, so we can just ignore them for the moment and talk about where we think this is going to go. And I do think that we will see an early general election as Boris tries to save his own skin in the wake of this confidence vote. But this is, as I said, this is the best possible result as far as I'm concerned. And hopefully we'll see an even bigger political car crash moving forward. We've still got to see, in October, energy prices are set to rise again. And then moving forward, we're expected to see more results from the additional kind of Partygate kind of fallout. There's supposed to be another investigation happening. I have no idea why. But if it keeps making Boris Johnson look bad, I guess, and clearly it's what the people, they don't want to hear about boring stuff about the utility of the policy platforms they've been engaged in. They want to hear Westminster drama. They want it to be a soap opera, and yes, we'll give the people what they want as long as if it makes the Conservative Party less appealing, then I guess that's fine. I'll deal with that. But we'll be interesting to see how other Conservatives do react to this afterwards too. We'll see. Well, we'll see. It should be an interesting period moving forward for electoral politics in general. I wonder what the reaction of Labour will be. Maybe will they push for a general election? Will they, if Boris Johnson tries to save something, will they try and get him to force him to try and call an election? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. You'd think that if you were Labour, you'd want, with the polls being as they are, you'd want there to be a general election, right? I mean, I think it might end up being as a hung parliament, which again probably be the result that I'd want. I don't want a Labour majority under Keir Starmer. I think that'd be fucking awful. But but the hung parliament in which there's a Labour minority government probably be the best possible, the best possible result moving forward? I don't know. We shall see what the future holds moving forward, but these are all just predictions off the cuff at the end of the day. But it is interesting. I think that the 41% is probably just the people who don't live in safe Conservative seats, worried about their jobs for the next election. As I've said previously, a lot of what's happening with this no confidence vote isn't a bunch of Conservative MPs who are worried about the integrity of Parliament. They're not worried about the Boris Johnson bringing Parliament and the jobs into disrepute. They're just worried that they're not going to have their seats the next election. It's incredibly. There was literally someone on LBC, an MP on LBC today, who admitted and saying, "Oh yeah, this is entirely self-serving. I don't care about whether or not my constituents want it or not. I want to make sure that I end up winning at the next election to keep my seat in Parliament, to keep my job, and keep my position of influence and power." So it's hardly a grand show of integrity from members of the Conservative Party, and it is more blatant self-aggrandizement in which they want to make sure that they maintain that they were the people who opposed Boris Johnson. Should there be some kind of if there's an election moving forward in which they don't think that he can win, or if there's a new leader, they've distanced themselves from the toxic brand of Boris Johnson, which I guess a lot of people who've been outwardly supportive have now frozen themselves into. People like Nadine Dorries, people like Liz Truss, people like Peter Bone, people like Michael Gove, right? These are all people who've explicitly gotten on the Boris bus. They've explicitly tied themselves to Boris Johnson as a leader. So I think they are now all just as invested as in Boris Johnson continuing on from today and continue on to the next election. So if that frozen brand that I've talked about previously has been created by by the Labour Party and the media in general to be able to put this as a Boris Johnson issue, all these people who've explicitly now post no vote of no confidence have explicitly tied themselves to the brand of Boris Johnson. What's going to happen to their political careers moving forward? I mean, obviously it depends on how Boris Johnson continues, but if my predictions are correct, he'll only get worse for him and then by proxy them too. So they're also putting their political futures in positions of political power moving forward as well. Although, as Andrew Marr says, there may be a cabinet shake-up, so maybe that will even more people be frozen into that brand moving forward. I'm not sure. We will have to see. But it does mean that the chances of us having someone outside of the Johnson kind of posse, I guess, like the cadre of people who surround him, being the next leader is much more likely now. Now we've seen such a tight vote of no confidence that shows, or vote of confidence rather, but only really a tight one where he shows that there's a lot of party disunity. Will probably mean that all the people who explicitly showed solidarity with Boris Johnson moving up to the vote are now going to not have support from the wider parliamentary party should there be another leadership election moving forward if Boris Johnson steps down, which I don't think he will. I think we're more likely to see an election. And it could be a very interesting one. Could be a very, very interesting one. And we'll see how much of their support dwindles to the Lib Dems in the blue wall as well. We shall see. Obviously, there's the by-election. There's a couple of by-elections coming up. Wakefield very obviously going red, but we shall see in Tiverton whether they lose that to the Lib Dems moving forward. That might be, if they do lose Tiverton from the fucking massive majority that they have, that might be what causes them to either have Boris Johnson stepping down or them calling another general election. Or maybe he'll wait 2 years. I don't know. I'm not Nostradamus. Anyway, well, thank you very much for watching, future YouTube viewers. I will catch you on the next one. Please like, subscribe, and follow all of my social medias in the comments. I do appreciate your time today, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.